This is Michael. I'm here with another episode for two sides of the same conversation, or two sides of the same convo. We're still working the name out, but we'll get solid at some point. Anyway, I'm here with my co-host Dennis.
What's up?
I think we've had a few episodes at this point, and it'd probably be good to kind of like recap. Maybe not so much recap everything, but kind of like bring it full circle. We had the first episode talking about our backgrounds, and we kind of talked about some current events, and we had our first guest over. And it sort of brings to mind an idea that I had on the way over here, and it sort of solidified actually just based on like our attire, and it's the idea of identity. Like, who are we, right? When we talked about our backgrounds, we talked about how we're both biracial, but we had two different upbringings, ended up in two different directions in our respective lives. And then we kind of came to this point, and we're still kind of different people. So, I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, the life experiences you've had that led you up to this point, to the person who you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I want to start by first talking about why we're dressed different. So last week, I said we needed to take pictures so we could start branding and creating all of the promo material that we're going to do, which is part of my identity, because we'll talk about like why I'm doing that. And then last night, I just called you, and I called you like in the midst of what you were doing, and changed it, and so that's why we're dressed different, right?
Yeah, and I totally forgot. I was like in the middle of doing things at home, and not that I don't mind the phone call, but it's just. You know how
horrible times.
There's just always something going on.
Yeah. So, but that's what you're gonna get. I mean, and I appreciate one of the reasons I want to share like that I enjoy. I mean, we've been friends now for more years than I can even count now, right? It's been a very long, a long time. So it's like I appreciate that you're consistently you, and I think. In my life, right? So hasn't been inconsistency. Here's where it ties back to like, who is my identity? My identity would just be someone that has had to survive. I was born and thrusted into really just a hostile environment. And I've just had to survive and make a choice of the type of person I want to be. So I think where that kind of lines up for me is, I've like most people, I think I've tried to be all different types of things. I've watched movies. I was inspired by personalities and people, and I think like you put them on like kind of like clothes. Like I'm gonna try to be a gangster, right? Yeah. And then you're like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. And then, so like I think like I'm an ever evolving person, but I don't. What is it? I'm triggered by like boxes. I'm definitely triggered by like prisons or kind of people try to cast. Especially now more than ever, you see, this discussion about what is America, right? And
what's American? Yeah.
Oh, what's American, right? And it's like this. Like you have people literally trying to paint a picture of what America is and should be, and anything outside of that picture is kind of non-American. So, I mean, I'll get deeper into my background. I want to segue back to you, but what I do want to say is like, I am someone that whenever I see a box, I'm going to break that mold. It just triggers me wrong. So if it's like a lot because of my background, I come from the streets. I come from really violence and all of this different stuff, but I've evolved out of it for years now. But I intentionally try not to fall into those stereotypes. Yep. I intentionally, now I could still 0 to 60 and break someone's face, and because it's just a part of me, but I'm not trying to live in that. And I had a conversation I'll share with you later about one of my friends. But if that makes sense, so my identity is ever evolving, but the whole point of this podcast is like us just being who we organically are. No?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And when I was thinking about like identity,
Yes.
the one thing that I always thought about, like when I was like growing up from, being in the being in the city and then moving to the suburbs. Oh, thank you. Is that trying to find a sense of identity? So I living in Dorchester, being like an outskirt of Boston, it's a predominantly African American space or black space, and then you move to a place like Haverhill, at least the time I moved, and it was predominantly a white space with, at that time, a growing Hispanic population. And so I moved into this school where there weren't that many black people, and the people who looked closest to me were Hispanic. And of course, I'm not Hispanic, so it's like people, as a little kid, or rather other little kids interact with me, they're like, wait a sec, you look like those other people, but you speak English.
Right.
And so growing up was predominantly trying to figure out who, to your point about boxes, trying to fit into a box, and not really fitting into a box because, I don't know, I was not the right shape to fit in the box, I guess.
Explain. What do you mean not the right shape?
Or, you ever seen that video? There's this video of this woman. She's watching somebody put in a bunch of different shapes, and then like she gets emotionally distraught when she sees like the guy first starts off with a square. He puts the square and he goes, okay, square goes in square, and then he has a circle. He goes, then the circle goes in, and you look like he's going to put it in the circle hole, and then he puts it into the square, and he does that for like every single shape, and this lady's just like completely distraught, right? And that, for me, I'm kind of like that lady where I'm like, I can fit into so many places, who am I,
Yeah.
And what I learned as an adult is that I should have, to your point, always just kind of been myself. Like, the answer was always there. It's just in the immediate environment that I was in, other people not realizing that they themselves didn't have to be put into boxes, and were putting themselves into boxes, and then basically they were out of their own confusion, were like, why don't you fit into a box? And I don't know if you've dealt with this when you were growing up, like either you had people interacting with you who made jokes about maybe your parents or your background because they know you don't neatly fit into a box, or even worse, microaggressions.
Yeah, so it's weird for me because so I was like, for lack of a better word, 19, and it's crazy, like my memory was so scattered, like, and my wife will always remind me, like, no, you were younger, because of the school. So I left my home for the first time in second grade. So
How are you leaving your home?
So I was in Greenleaf.
Okay.
And my parents would stay up at night. So they'd stay up at night, they'd party, they'd have company. My father was a musician. So in the morning, getting the kids ready would be a fight, because they'd both be tired. And there was a lot of expectation on me from them, like, the yelling from the room, get dressed, and all this crazy stuff. So and my parents, I just want to share, they were like dealing with addiction, right? The worst kind of addiction in that time. So I'd have to go through a pile of dirty clothes to get dressed, and I was, the smelly kid in class, which I didn't, I think I knew, but I didn't know until literally that day, where I was because you're a kid, you like people, you're looking for friendship, right, and you try to scoot next to people and they're like, ew. And then it became a problem where I was sent to the nurse, because then, the teachers had no idea what to do with it.
Right.
And they DSS, which it was Department of Social Services back then. Now it's DCF, Department of Children and Families. They were notified. My grandmother was notified because she was like on my green card, like in case of an emergency.
Right.
So she came and picked me up. She took me to Red Shoe Barn because my feet were the source of the smell. I had like wet sneakers or something. So she, got me new socks, bought me new sneakers. We ate lunch. I was at her house, which I loved because it was resourced, and then it was resourced, but then
It's important.
Yeah, it's important. So then after that was when the DCF worker came, and I was told that I was going to be going to like a foster home, a temporary foster home. So that was like the beginning of like being removed.
Yep.
And then from there, the process once you're removed is like reintegration. So like they start, whatever my mother had to go through, start going to courts. I know it now, but as a kid, I didn't know what was going on. And the hardest thing was my sister got to stay at my grandparents. So like my grandparents took my sister in, but they were older. They couldn't take both of us. So I kind of went into this system. And oddly enough, I met the Simpson family. So there was one of in Haverhill, there's a Simpson family. There's a black family that has been in Haverhill for a long time. But Grover, one of the older Simpson, in this foster home, there was like an attic where they were like the older kids. And I was like downstairs, I was a second grader. But I'll never forget seeing another black kid in a foster home. I was like, oh my God, like I felt like connected to him.
Yeah.
Which must have been weird for him, right? Because it's like...
Well, maybe not. I don't know, maybe he had the same feeling.
Well, I don't think so, because they were upstairs and he was kind of like, yeah, whatever, little dude. You know what I'm saying? Like he's in a foster home navigating what he's navigating. But I don't even know if I've ever said this to Grover. Like through the years, like I took up and felt connected to that family. When you start calling people, like we start calling each other cousins.
Right.
From that bond, that situation. So I'm just saying that to say I never thought about microaggressions, nothing, because like a second grade, I was faced with all these unique challenges that kind of just threw me into a tailspin, and then it never stopped. My life until I got out of incarceration at 26, and kind of took the bull by the horns with becoming a better person. Like by then, all of the experiences that I had explored every aspect, I think, of the streets that you can explore, and I was just like, there's nothing out here for me. So normally, to get back to your point, whenever anybody this is where we're different in experience, right? Whenever anybody in the school or coming up through those days, anybody ever even tried to do anything to me, at first I used to eat it. Like I would eat it and just be like, sad or run away and cry or whatever and be bullied. And then I hit one day a flip switch. A switch flipped. Right. And when that switch flipped, I was like, I longed for the power of hurting people, because like, oh, okay, you wanna cause pain, right? Let me show you how it feels. But then by that point, it was psychotic. Like the things I was doing made no sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And actually, you're right. It was different because. I don't know why it was different for me, but I did actually physically react to people. And then over time, I actually stopped.
Why?
I think, well, one of the times, and I partially started telling the story in the first episode, there was one individual who I considered to be a friend, but then, I, in fact, bullied this person in response to the fact that I was just getting bullied at the time. In mind you, I reacted to the other actual bullies too.
Right.
But I was just, I don't want to say psychotic like you, but like, you get into a mindset and then I don't know, maybe I was kind of a bit wiser at the time, but I just realized, I'm like, that doesn't make any I knew I made an error and it didn't make any sense, and from that point on, I changed, and it also helped that we went from what was the time the St. James Elementary School, and then to the brand new at that time Golden Hills School, so it almost helped allow me to reset too.
Yeah.
Because there was also like a whole other different group of kids, along with the kids that I grew up with in the first 3 grades. And then, sort of ironically enough, even though I've improved as a person, I remember actually both teachers, they had issues with me. They always say I was super talkative.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm an introverted person. I mean, I think you figured that out. I'm more often thinking than I am talking. And mind you, I was a little bit of a clown, but like, I grew up with a Jamaican mother. Like, respect is number one. So I knew that, and I remember, especially around like 5th grade, I had this one teacher, and she was just like, I would whisper to somebody, and she'd just be like, "Get out of the classroom."
Yeah.
But mind you, I think this is where I look at it as like a microaggression. I knew I was like one of the only people of color in that classroom.
Right.
And other people would talk, but they weren't getting the same treatment. I wasn't unaware of that. By the time I got to 6th grade, and I was in middle school, I was like, I just can't do those things, especially in some of the spaces that I moved into. Because I don't know if you remember how middle school was, where they had different tiers, if you will, like, your like tiers in terms of what I guess your cognitive ability or your skills at that time. So like somebody finally recognized, oh hey, I didn't need to be in, like, if you will, the average English and math classes. I could take the higher level ones. So once I got into that, when you get to like those kind of grades, like skill levels, if you will, you're amongst a bunch of students who, they're not going to tolerate a class clown because they're too focused in their work.
Right.
And I picked up on that immediately. I mean, mind you, I would still crack some jokes here and there, but like, it was more like almost sophisticated. Like, I'm not going to be stupid for the sake of being stupid. It's like, it's all about timing. Like, a good comedian knows about timing.
So how about that? I mean, that's another conversation probably for a whole nother episode. Yeah. But I think, harsh environments or harsh circumstances for me, you really come to a place of understanding what you cannot control, right? As a child, I couldn't control who my parents were. I couldn't control these systems reacting centered on good. One would think, right? They're thinking they're helping, but right. The implementation is different. So as a young person who every place I was landed in, until I became, an adult. And if you really think about it, right? Like from 2nd grade to 21, I had no decisions about where I came. So I came out, made a really horrible decision. And then at 26, when I had autonomy to make my own decisions, I figured it out. And I haven't been back since. So a lot of that stuff was people putting you in places and you had no control. So I think when you're in environments that you have no control, you tend to focus more on what you can control. And that's where I found my freedom. Like, yes, I was incarcerated, but I learned to read. I learned to write music. I learned to I studied faith. So even and I was very disciplined on how I interacted with my environment, and I was very aware of my environment and who not to interact. And those skills, when I came out here, just they helped me in such a crazy way. But out here, where I say like I don't feel free, is like you can't avoid people from like rudely intruding in your personal freedoms. Like people take so much liberty, like we were talking about, right? Like, you're gonna tell me what I need to be an American? Sir, that's very offensive. Where I come from, that if you keep rubbing that, like it's going to cause a tension which and it could trigger. So like, you know, it's very interesting. You know, how experiences shape you. But the other thing that's like very interesting is, like, I feel privileged to have so many lessons, because now here we are, and you were talking about this in one of our first episodes, and it stuck with me, where you were saying that people have made decisions and now they're 45 and they hate you because they were in this construct where they had well-to-do parents and it looked like they were going to be trajected to the moon, but the decisions they've made,
or lack thereof,
right, have caused a different outcome. So like my point is, like, I see that too, like, where it's like, man, you're 45, you're 50 years old, and you're still struggling with like supporting yourself. Mm-hmm. And people got a ton of skills. It's not like, you know, people don't have skills. So like, so yeah, I mean, it's very interesting seeing that and dealing with it. And I think it was easier before I had children.
Everything's easier before you have children.
Well, I could deal with the exposure, right? Like, I could deal with the exposure, but what you're not going to do, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, so.
Well, speaking of decisions and children and how things are easier before them, we do have to end it here because we do have our obligations because of children and all the other stuff. So this has been another episode of Two Sides of the Same Convo. I'm Mike. This is Dennis.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.